So here's a graph, and this shows daily marijuana use, everybody 12 years and older in the United States. And it really started to go up in 2006. And the top one is daily use over the past month, and the bottom one is daily use over the past year. And it's gone up steadily. This is to 2013. But I've looked at it through 2017. We now have data, and it has doubled from 2006 to 2017. And the question is, okay, is it going up equally everywhere, or is it going up mostly in the states with medical marijuana laws? And there's a really good study came out in 2017, and it showed, no, it's going up mostly faster in the medical marijuana law states. And the thing is, what they say is, oh, those medical marijuana states have high rates of use, but they always did. That's why they passed medical marijuana laws. Well, no, the research shows that the high rates came after they passed it. So here's the study. It's not a great graph, but back in the 90s, the upper line is the medical marijuana states, the red line is the non-medical marijuana states. They were the same back in the 90s, but marijuana abuse increased 68% faster in the states with medical marijuana laws. There's not much else that could have caused it besides those laws. Here's just marijuana use in general, increased 66% faster. So this is considered pretty good evidence that medical marijuana laws increase overall marijuana use and abuse. The question is, do they also increase teenage use? And that's harder to show. This is medical marijuana states are in red. The non-medical marijuana states are in blue. This is teenage use. Obviously, the medical marijuana states all have higher teenage use than the non-medical marijuana states. But the claim is, oh yeah, but that predated the use. Well, did medical marijuana cause this difference, or did it predate the laws? And there's some evidence. Teens in medical marijuana states have been shown to be more likely to try marijuana. Teens who see medical marijuana ads are twice as likely to try it. This is probably the best one. In Oregon, the study showed that counties with more medical patients also have higher rates of teenage use, which speaks to diversion. And I think that's pretty clear evidence that the laws themselves are causing increased teenage use. But when you look at the research so far says that they do not find medical marijuana laws associated with increased use. And I want to point out, does not find is a negative finding. It doesn't mean it's not true, because you can't prove a negative. Negative findings mean we look and didn't find it. For example, I can't find my keys. I searched my entire house and I didn't find them. That doesn't prove they are not in the house. All it proves is that I didn't look in the right place. It proves that either I didn't look in the place, or they're not in the right place, or they're not in the house. One of those two. And I can search the house 100 times and not find them, and I still have those same two choices. Either I didn't look in the right place, or they're not in the house. If 101st time I search the house and I find them, what I know is those 100 studies, I didn't look in the right place. And so that one positive finding overrules all the negative. And the same is true with research. Nobody would say, oh, you 100 studies, you didn't find the keys, and one time you did, therefore the preponderance of evidence says they were not in the house. That would not make any sense. So the same really does apply to research. But the thing is, remember, negative findings don't prove anything, because I'm going to talk about the shoddy research. So there's a lot of deceptive research out here, and it's important to learn about because you're going to be running into it all the time. And there's a few tricks we see repeatedly. Research that has no control group, research that just assumes that correlation is causation, poorly designed studies that bring you a negative finding. If you do a really lousy search for the keys and don't find them, and then claim, oh, they're not in the house, then it's like the Russians saying, oh, we looked to see if there was any criminal involvement in the murder of journalists, and say, we didn't find any. Well, of course they didn't find it. That's the way they look. Anyway, you can do a really crummy study and then misinterpret negative findings, and that's what happened in this case. So it's a study called Medical Marijuana Laws and Teenage Marijuana Use. The study found no evidence that medical marijuana laws are associated with increased teenage use. They were very good. They didn't say we proved that it didn't. They just said we didn't find it. But man, they went out of their way not to find it. Look what they did. So they only looked at teenage use for 3 years after each state passed its law. So here on the left is Montana. After 3 years, there were 500 medical marijuana patients in Montana. A few years later, there were 30,000, but the study didn't look then. In Colorado, after 3 years, there were about 1,000 medical marijuana patients. A few years later, there were 125,000, but they only looked the first 3 years. And if we look at Colorado, they looked up to 2004. Well, starting in 2006, the blue line is Colorado, teenage use in Colorado, the red line is the nation. Teenage use went way up in Colorado. It increased 50%. So if they'd looked for all those years, they would have found it. But they didn't look, so they can safely say they didn't find it. But they correctly said we didn't find it. However, the purpose of deceptive research is not to misinform other researchers, it's to get it out in the news media. And they did a wonderful job of getting it in the news media. And there's got to be some cooperation because every single outlet misinterpreted the study. You know, they all misinterpreted it as saying it's proof that this doesn't happen. Medical marijuana won't boost teen pot use. That's not what it's proved. That's like saying keys not in the house study finds. It's not what happened. But there's CBS, there's US News saying that it's not happening. There's ABC News saying it doesn't lead to increased use. Huffington Post, of course, does not increase teen use. The New York Times, medical use of marijuana doesn't increase use. This is a really crummy study, and actually it's done by people who've been quoted in the press saying very pro-marijuana things. NBC saying the same thing. So what's going on here? These are major media outlets. They have good science journalists. They know what a negative finding is. They all printed the same untrue headline. So I think there's something going on there. But part of the problem is they allow marijuana users to report on this issue. And a lot of marijuana issues, their first allegiance is to marijuana. It's not to journalism. And I'm just showing you so you understand why we are so misinformed about marijuana. And the news media really cooperates with this. So how do you tell if medical marijuana laws are increasing teenage use? And the type of period I'd like to look at is 2005 to 2011, when teenage use went up a whole lot. So did the increase come equally from all states or more from medical marijuana states? And I presented this at a California Society of Addiction Medicine conference as a poster. And the blue line is the non-medical marijuana states, and the red line is the medical marijuana states. And it clearly went up more. Teenage use went up much more in the medical marijuana states. It increased by 33% in those states, but only 6% in the rest of the nation. Now, this is a really tricky graph because it's a wide confidence interval. It should be very fuzzy lines. I started it at 6%. If I want to do a really even-handed graph, it would actually look like this. Those are the same graphs, that and that. This is much more honest. But even so, that difference towards in 2010, 2011, that's a significant difference. So in 2005, 10 states had medical marijuana laws. They only had 20% of the population, but they accounted for 60% of the increased teenage use. I think that's pretty significant evidence that medical marijuana laws increase teenage use. So what are the side effects of medical marijuana laws? Increased adult and teenage use. And I think that is a huge problem because we know that marijuana causes all sorts of problems.